Good afternoon, happy Friday, and welcome to the game on Pax8 Live, the show where we talk about all the cybersecurity shenanigans you need to be aware of from the past week, and we never seem to run out. We have a super exciting show today with Jim Manico joining us. A little bit of housekeeping. You will see me disappear in the middle of the show due to some other obligations, so Matt will be tying off the interview today. But with that, let's break straight into the news.
All right, Dom. I guess I heard your auditors are needing you to be off-site. Are they doing another site inspection? Is that what's happening this afternoon while you're leaving me?
Yeah, they threatened me with fines, so I gotta go meet with
It's
them.
always
And
when the money comes to play is when things happen and
yeah,
change happens, isn't it?
yeah.
All right, man. Let's look at the news today. I really want to, kind of dive into just the middle segment and talk about it for a little bit. But let's take a look at this. Can you kick us off to the first article, please, Danielle? Okay, LockBit has actually come out and said, yep, it was us that did the Royal Mail cyber attack. Another victim of LockBit ransomware gang, right? And if you remember, LockBit's kind of one of the ones that's been on the forefront of this. They're the ones that have a bug bounty program, which it might come up today. Does your company have a bug bounty program? It might come up, do you have vulnerability disclosure capabilities? Well, guess what? LockBit does, and they'll pay you up to $1 million if you help them fix their code problems. And so you're starting to see them emerge as just really one of the top ransomware gangs doing this, but they have now claimed attacking yet another nation state service and caused severe service disruption. This comes after they already previously said, that they did not attack Royal Mail, but they have now changed and made attribution on this. Dom, have you been following this one very much? This has been of recent news.
Yeah, not super close, but it's an interesting one because obviously being a mail processing agency, there's some OT elements to this one, right? If you look at the article, there's literally a printed ransom note. I don't know that I've seen a printed ransom note in ransomware, and I feel sorry for the person that has to type that onion URL into a browser somewhere.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but yeah,
37
nonetheless, it's
characters
an
after the
interesting
slash.
attack. Yeah, yeah.
Did they print it on a printer in the organization because they had access to that? Is that
I
the
think it
aspect of
says,
how they
yeah,
delivered this?
I'm pretty sure that's, yeah. Ransom note printer during the attack on Royal Mail.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I have to assume that that's printing out, whatever they put on envelopes for the sorting or whatever. But
Sure.
yeah, in the article, it's a printed one. But what fascinates me about LockBit is that VDP, right, or that vendor disclosure program or vulnerability disclosure program.
Vulnerability. Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
they have a more mature VDP than most software vendors, right?
Right.
So it's pretty interesting to see. Like, you think HackerOne's going to let them in and host their program there a little more
Well,
formally, or
it would help them matriculate the program and make it
it
easier to
would,
pay the
yeah,
proceeds to the
at
normal
scale, right? Yeah,
researchers. Yeah, this
yeah.
is all about. You know what? I like the way you think, Dom. You're doing the companies a service for that
It's just good
in
business
LockBit
sense, you
scale.
know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It is funny. We joke about this, but when I talk to MSPs and I talk to SMBs about cybersecurity, this isn't all that fancy. It's literally a business.
Nope.
These threat actors are here to make money. And the understanding of that is they're going to continue to change their ways. They're going to continue to find ways to actually improve, make their code better, make the capabilities better. And it's ironic. And the reason it's ironic is it's the exact inverse of what I see in most businesses and most ISVs and vendors and people that build code today on the enterprise side and on the commercial side, that the threat actors are actually more ahead of the game of having their own vulnerability disclosure program than most businesses, right? And I think that just exposition is really why I wanted to have this
They
special guest
probably
here
have
today.
more SOPs and like operational plans than most businesses from a technical perspective too. Like, these are mature organizations, and I don't remember if it was Lockbit, but one of them was hiring. It might have been Soda
So
no
no Kibi.
Kibi. Man,
Yeah.
was
It's a
was
mouthful.
hiring
I
for
only
$1
know it
million
too well
a
because of
month.
very bad reasons, but that's okay.
Yes, yes.
So
But they were hiring and offering $1 million a month if you produced. Like, that's not a bad
hit your
salary if you
quota,
ask me.
$1 million.
Yeah,
That's a good day,
yeah,
Tater.
yeah.
For sure. Which brings me into this next one, right? If you think about the printer and the printed ransomware note, how does this play out in this next one, right? So Danielle, why don't you bring up this next kind of threat that we're looking at right now? Active ESXiArgs ransomware campaign targeting ESXi servers, which was a ransoming of the ESXi servers from the ESXi management interface. The interesting part about this vulnerability, and it's getting a lot of news, and it's also been subject to my recent beard banter talking about Maybe I shouldn't just forward stuff. Maybe we need to add context and add value and tell people how to protect themselves. Well, this one's simple, isn't it, Dom? How does someone protect themselves, at least from the broad majority of this challenge, if they have ESXi servers? What would be Papa Dom's advice from the auditors?
Oh, don't open ESXi to the world would be, yeah.
No.
I don't know.
Management
But,
interfaces to the internet equals bad thing. You're blowing my mind right now,
Sometimes,
Dom.
I don't know. I mean, it is awful convenient to be able to go in there and bounce your VMs, right? But
true, yeah,
it's
great.
You know, VPNs
It's
exists. You know, SASE with site to sites exists. Don't open this stuff to the WAN.
Yeah.
And we've seen it. You know, if you go look at some more well-known private cloud vendors and you hunt them around on DNS Dumpster and Shodan, you'll find VMware management consoles open to the world, right? With like signed certificates that are valid and they meant to do it. They did it very, very intentionally. Yeah, and it's wild to see. But these are not meant to be open to the WAN, right? Like I've never read a VMware doc that says, "Hey, open this to the WAN for your convenience."
And it gives even more arguments for SDP and ZTNA type structures when you're managing those things, right? As you start thinking about, if I am going to have to manage my, I'm sorry. All right, girls, I apologize. SDP, software defined perimeter, and ZTNA, zero trust network architecture. And when you start thinking about that, they have these, you see, I got credit. I didn't even have to be told I needed to the acronym. So when our guest comes on, he's going to have to define any acronyms he tosses out. Yeah. I get my own points, self-toss. But the point is, no pun intended, is really that these ESXi services shouldn't be exposed to the internet. And you should, at least if you are going to do it and you need broad access, there should be other ways to approach it. With software-defined perimeter and ZTNA, which uses typically SDP as a model, you're saying, I need to be able to talk to all these different services. Well, then we're going to talk to them in a private way. We're going to talk to them in ways where granular access controls say, yes, you have access to that one, but not that one. And you have to be coming from this location, and you have all these extra additional protections that need to exist.
And if you have to start somewhere, like if you're not in a position to roll SDP or SASE, something like a WAF, like a Cloudflare access,
sure,
right? Where
perfect,
or at least you're terminating in a data center where you can add authentication rules. Something, right? And I'd recommend the same for Exchange. Like put a WAF in front of your Exchange environment so that you can rapidly remediate things when the need arises, and the need will arise. I also want to point out this doesn't mean don't patch it, right? Don't just take it off.
Right. Like, this is not a compensating control.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But it is a good remediation for this attack in particular, and every Exchange vulnerability we've seen, or at least the big ones, would not have had such an impact had you not had web services exposed to the world, which is obviously a big ask. But
yeah, and we've seen this, right? There's still some speculation that the data hasn't actually come out in the wild, but there was an MSP that had 100 ESXi hosts exposed. You can find them right there in DNS Dumpster, and they had every single VM and every single client environment that was hosted in that ransomed sometime in late November. And that has still not come out, but you can almost guarantee this type of vulnerability has been being used for quite a while. And you're starting to see it. And then I did some digging yesterday on Shodan, which if anybody's not from, the auditor's in the room. I got shut up. I wasn't using Shodan. Tell him to go. Go. Okay, we're cool. Yeah, so anyways, I maybe he won't listen to me. It's okay. So the Shodan aspect, I did some digging, and I found ESXi servers almost instantly with very little effort that would be very easy for me to destroy without their POC on these type of endeavors, y'all. So if you have any exposed ESXi maybe ransomware. If you have any exposed ESXi servers right now and you're an MSP, I would really give myself a lot of thought on that and how I might change that infrastructure this year as one of my POAM items or plan of actions and milestones. So we don't have to beat this to death too much more. Let's go ahead and pull up that last article, Danielle, for me, please. Okay, this is really just a little more informational, but it really gets into this kind of how do you healthy respond to things, right? And GitHub's coming out saying, hey, we had to revoke our signing certs. We had to go back. And maybe somebody questions the handling of those signing certs, and maybe someone questions the handling and how they've been coded and how they've been placed in and how they are using in their day-to-day function. And this kind of brings me into, what the story of today is, Dom, and I won't dwell on this too much, but we're talking about this from the.
Also, there's an
I'm watching our
pivot
guest slap
here, though,
himself and get ready, and I'm dying right now. So I just had to lay that out there. So I got distracted. Let's get back to work. Sorry.
There's an important pivot in this story because I see a lot of poorly managed cryptography in the channel. And if you are going to implement PKI, you have to do it correctly, right? PKI is all about trust, and
Yes.
it is very easy to ruin that trust if I compromise your private key. So I've seen a ton of CAs, certification authorities, just managed all over the place with plain text private keys,
Also
saved in
PKI,
C/ no
please,
secrets
Dom.
here. Oh, public key infrastructure, SSL
you.
certificates,
Appreciate you.
TLS
Yeah.
certificates.
Thank you.
Transport layer,
Secure
security
socket layer,
certificates.
since he also used SSL. It's fine.
Yeah. But that is the lifeblood of trust on the internet. And if you're implementing it in your organization in some way, and I wrote about this pretty heavily when I covered Azure AD CertAuth, you have got to protect those private keys, especially if you're running certificate authority. But even if you have an entity certificate or your mattlee certificate or your DomKirby.com certificate or whatever, you have got to protect those private keys.
Yeah,
because 100%. It's based on trust, and the end entity cert, trust the next cert up, the next cert. Like
that's why this one is the only place that mattlee cert lives, right? This is literally the only enclave this exists in. So
right,
yeah.
And don't just
100%.
fly into it. If you don't need cert based auth, don't use it. Use FIDO. It's just so much easier.
True story. True story. Well, and this also brings me into this other conversation. We, for the last forever, as MSPs and channel and also enterprise in their own right alike, have bought software, right? You've bought software, you use software, we've dealt with software, we have cloud SaaS application software, but we've all worked with some form of software. And the lens in security and in modern compliance and risk structure with companies, you ask those companies about their practices. You ask them about things like, hey, do you have MFA? Do you have SOC 2? And those practices do a decent job at looking at the service health and the organizational health. You know what they don't do a good job at doing? They tell you nothing about whether they're writing trash code. They tell you nothing about whether they're writing your demise into their horrible, horrible application development pipeline. Right? And the challenge has been said. And you were in the room when this phrase was uttered, and I won't say who said it, but you've had someone challenge us before that said a lot of money is made on shitty software. Word for word. That was the real statement that was made from an executive perspective. And the reason I bring it up is that's changing. A lot of risk is built with shitty software. A lot of things that will kill you and execute you as a company is built with that same software today. Right? It can only go on so long with somebody like a Palo Alto having a new vulnerability every 5 seconds in the news before people from a consumer choice perspective change. And now that more and more people are being held accountable and more things are driving this.
Let's break down the operational impact before we bring Jim on. A big thing that I always call out is 0 days are going to exist. Vulnerabilities are going to exist.
Always.
Every vendor that exists for any decent period of time will have a CVSS9, which is Common Vulnerability Scoring System. And if it's a 9, it's bad. It's going to happen. However, when that happens, what we have to do as a vendor, like let's say you and I wrote a piece of software, we have to reach out to all of our customers and be like, hey, you got to stop what you're doing right now and patch this, right? Assuming we have patch available, which hopefully we do. Every time that happens, you are throwing a wrench into a machine, right? For each customer, right? When the exchange thing first went down, everyone was like, man, CP is doing taxes and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, yep, you got to stop it. And so if you do that to your customers 100 times, they're going to be done with you, right? You are costing them tangible productivity, which leans into
let's talk about it even worse, right? What about cloud apps that don't have CVSS? If it's a cloud application and it's SaaS, there is no way to register that vulnerability. It's really whether they do, which ties us into why I want Jim Manico. If you've ever done any research about this man or searched the name or dug into it, he is the OGest of OG in a lot of this cybersecurity conversation.
So
yeah.
We bring Jim
so
on. Jim,
since your
thanks for joining
auditors
us. I'm going to watch this back, but we will catch you guys.
Hello, Matt. Hello, Dom. Hello, gentlemen.
What's
Great
up?
to be
Let's
here.
Let's kick
today.
Dom out so we can just get real down and dirty with this one, Jim. Let's do it. Bye, Dom. Thanks for being here.
The whole news. GJG, Dom. Oh, I got to explain my acronyms. GJ means great job. That's like a side of, praising him for meritorious conduct. And G is gangster. So GJG.
Nice.
Good job, gangster. Take care, Dom.
Amazing.
Appreciate you.
That's amazing. All right. Fair enough. Well, good stuff. So,
Take
Jim,
your
let's
acronyms.
do this. Yeah. You always got to do your acronyms. And I appreciate you playing along. And so do the people down in the box that run our world. So I appreciate you, Jim. So what I'd love for you to do, if people don't know you at all, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell me a little bit about your history and what drives you, man. Like, let's get into that first.
It's an honor to be here. I'm so glad to be on your show. So I've been a professional software developer for about 25 years, like focus of Java web-based development from the early 90s. I started at GE and wrote enterprise software in Java at the beginning of my career, and I've been doing it ever since. About 15 years ago, I started mixing development, security research, and doing some teaching. About 10 years ago, I founded Manicode Security, which is a pure play secure coding education instructor-led training firm. I have like 12 professors that work for me in some way, and I just teach developers how to write secure code. And I got to tell you, Matt, it's fun. Going and doing hardcore pen testing and security assessment, that's really hard work. Teaching, it is hard work. I have to do research and keep up, but it's so much fun being an educator. And I'm really glad this is what I get to do in the world of cybersecurity.
Yeah. It's really cool. I'm going to put a pin in this because I come from a very engineering background, Jim. I'm very cloud engineering, identity engineering. That's my world. And so learning to be a teacher has actually been the hardest thing I've ever done. It's the teacher's dilemma. You try to say something to someone that has some requisite behind it. It's very tough to get the understanding when they don't have that requisite and you don't know it, right? Like it's maybe we get into that here in a bit, but I will tell you, that was a challenge for me. Was it for you as well in that transitional period to becoming an educator?
Being a teacher is hard. It requires, number one, the mastery of the knowledge and the ability to communicate that to people. But number two, especially in the world of professional instructor-led training, if you want to get one gig, you don't need this. But if you want recurring customers, then you have to be a compelling speaker, and you have to use diction and like a fluctuation of your voice and be able to handle really aggressive students with grace and answer questions. And like, you got to keep a positive, like entertaining flow in the class. And I get a lot of recurring business. Teach it monotone and boring. You've been there, Matt. Boring, monotone 8-hour classes.
Yep.
No,
you die.
Tune out after an hour or two. So like, and that's just not natural. That's just like years and years of giving talks and years of teaching. My first class and first talk was awful. It just takes a lot of grinding and practice being in front of an audience to do it.
Yeah, it's funny. I without reminiscing too much, my first one was in Puerto Rico in like 2015 or so. And when I was on that stage, I was so rigid. I was sweating. Nobody wanted to watch that. It was horrible, man. Like, it's not fun at all. But as I got to like myself more and be more involved in making people happy and driving the fun of it, boy, it got a lot easier. So I would concur that completely,
Absolutely.
man. So, you've worked on some cool things, and I bet you have some real opinions on this conversation. But why, what are some signs that you've seen that companies are starting to actually, the vendors, those ISVs, those code producing entities, what are some signs you've seen that they're actually starting to think about this being more about part of their world, that security is not an afterthought? I hate calling shift left because it just marketing crap. But when you see that, what are your signs that tell you they're taking it seriously, man, that they need to teach their people how to be secure, not just code?
I think the first thing I'd put out that I think a lot of people in security understand, even though I don't think it's the most important, it's something that is identifiable: a mature, automated, DevOpsian security testing program. Whereas I'm like checking in code or adding code to a repository or doing any kind of push, that a series of scanning tools, an automated security scanning tools, static analysis, dynamic analysis, third-party library software composition analysis are all firing off, boom, 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 before I can get my code live or before I can get my code checked in, depending on what your philosophy is. That's one of the first things I'm going to look for. Without that, I don't think there's a lot of hope, right? If you're not, if you're, it's 2023 and you're not running code or some kind of security scanning tool as a regular part of development, you're way behind the 8 ball, and it's a bad sign. And
which those are things. Let's demystify that a bit, right? So we're talking about this. So if I'm an MSP and I'm trying to say, what would I want to ask my vendor if they're doing? In your point, it would be a question something like this: do you have a separation of your production environment that when I put in code, it's going to be scanned or checked about these types of things for the common mistakes that exist? And that's that first litmus test, right? Have they put in any type of modern, before explosion, this thing gets looked at and checked to make sure it's got some of the things done?
And I would even, I would ask it in a real general way. I usually ask it like, how often for this specific piece of software or this mesh of microservices, it's like one big virtual app. And the question is,
Another great call
often
out.
how often do you run static analysis scanning tools on your code base for this application? And they might be, what static analysis? I'm like, got my answer. Or they might be like, well, we run it once before release. And I'm like, and do you fix the bugs before release? Yeah, we run it once, we fix the bugs and then release. I'm like, well, that's kind of immature, but at least they're running it.
You're doing
and then they
something,
might be like, oh, my developers are blocked from checking in. They're blocked from merging code into production unless they're like semgrep and check marks clean, and we have custom rules for both. I'm like, all right, you're now really doing. Now you're rocking. Now it's a really integrated part of your DevOps lifecycle, of your development lifecycle. And so, saying, how often do you run a dynamic scanner? How often do you run a third-party library scanner? Hey, this legacy piece of code, we're not working. How often do you run security scanners on your legacy code? Even a legacy code that you're still making money on, you should still be running third-party library supply chain scanning on it in case those libraries are known to be vulnerable. And at least
I've never heard of a library all of a sudden becoming massively vulnerable. There's never been anything like Log4j or any of that space. That's preposterous, Jim. That doesn't happen.
Who would have thought a Java Armageddon would come from a logging library?
The logging engine. Yeah. Dude.
It did not. Alvaro Munoz. Hat tip to Alvaro
I had
Munoz.
more toilet fodder. I had more stuff to read because of that. You know how many license plate attacks with Jindy written on it I got to go through for the next 3 months? That was literally
awesome.
one of the most beautiful meme space I've ever been in.
I'm Googling. I'm searching right now. JN.
Oh, this dude drove around.
License plate. Oh, I got to see this.
And he had determined that there was an OCR in UK that read out the license plate and took the Jindy command in and ran. And he was just checking for connections on it from the driver's license plates. It was so good. Anyways, I digress. But the point you're making is
people are putting Log4j attacks on their license plate. The Log4Shell attack on their license plate.
So good.
My life is complete now, Matt. Thank you.
It is, right? You're welcome, brother. That's what I'm here for. I live to serve, for sure. You know, but you get into this conversation, right, about do companies even have a software bill of materials? That's probably a great question to ask and say, hey, do you have an SBOM? Do you have anything that says, here's my third-party application dependencies that I use?
You know, an SBOM would be nice, but like, you know what? Some people have an SBOM and then don't update it. So I'd be happier if they're running a DevOps shop, if they're running a software composition analysis tool that identifies insecure libraries, and they have some kind of service level agreement in the contract to update those libraries that are known to be vulnerable. And like an SBOM is great. It gives me a list of your materials, but it doesn't tell me what your update library cadence is. It doesn't tell me what tooling you're using. It doesn't tell me how integrated your security testing is within your development environment and how integrated it is with them. Can I actually push a library? Can I actually introduce a new library into development that has known vulnerabilities? Like, what if that library is like not been around for 3 years? Is that, or is licensing? Anyways, the point I'm trying to make is SBOM is an overblown buzzword that upsets me. And it's still good. It's still important. It's still great. But please do the work and update your freaking libraries and update your
instead of here's the list of stuff that you hung by. You're now saying let's maybe not have the list. Let's get it down to not having vulnerable stuff, right? Like to the point.
SBOM is a point in time, Matt. I want to understand your update cadence over the last 6 months. And guess how many people even have that data, let alone look for it. But
or can prove it.
All my snark aside, an SBOM is still a good step. It lets me see if they're using up-to-date libraries. It's a good step.
I was with you as a maturity step. Now, here's what's cool, though. No one has coined this. I'm going to give you another freebie today, Jim. I'm telling you.
I'm ready.
All right, you ready? Zero Trust Code Architecture, ZTCA. That's yours. Nobody's done it. No Gartner. Nobody's got this.
Code architecture.
Code architecture.
Zero Trust. Oh, yeah, Zero Trust. That's such a meaningful term to me.
Oh,
because everyone uses it for like 50 different things. Zero Trust Code Architecture.
Yeah, you're ZTCA now, Jim. That's your new buzz.
What does Zero Trust mean to you?
Well, in this case, it would mean that you're not going to allow people to bring code in until it has been inspected, until it has been checked for these libraries, until it has been documented, until it has been dynamically scanned, until it has been, and until then and only then can it actually enter into my production environment. And so I think I would look at it as a method, if I was Gartner, right, which I'm not, but if I was Gartner, it'd be a method of talking about all the little things that are already out there, right? Like you've said it, dynamic scanning, static scanning, automated patching, denial of code load. Yeah. You could just codify that as a set of those as ZTCA and make like millions of hits, man. Yeah.
No one's used that. I don't see that term being used anywhere.
It has not been used. I checked it before this show as best I could.
That is both horrific and beautiful all at the same time. And I'm going to start using that term.
It's all you.
And I'm going to It came from Matt Lee. No. It's Matt Lee. Matt Lee coined the term on February 10, 2003, and I'm going to steal it.
It's right here.
ZTCA, a zero trust code architecture where the development environment, the literal repository that is the truth for that software and work being done, they reject code that hasn't gone through scanning. And this is the heart of like what DevOps
and you end up signing that code through that process. And that's the way I would approach this is an architecture that can incorporate actual proof of code going through that path cryptographically. So maybe way off topic for the show, but we got there.
So DevSecOps is not enough of a buzzword for you. Enough of a marketing buzzword for you, Matt. So you had to bring zero trust into it and rename.
Everybody's doing it. All the cool kids
to be zero trust code architecture. I love you, Matt. You're so
all
horrible
the cool kids
and awesome
at
the same time.
It's great. It's great. A little snark involved, but it's okay. It's awesome, man.
Though. That's what DevOps is really about, though. Let me ask you this, though. I'm doing DevOps, and at deploy time, I'm solving the problem of not letting code or libraries in that have security problems. But what if I continue to scan that app and a new rule picks up a problem after I go live, or a libraries are deemed to be vulnerable?
Yeah, it happens as a point in time. Yeah, of course.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So like the other thing I'd want to know is like how good are our organizations at scanning supply chain, scanning third-party libraries between development cycles? Because I've seen some of my customers do this. Well, they'll just do it once a day. They'll take a legacy app they're not working on, but they still make money from it. It's live, and they'll just run like a third-party library scanner on it. There's plenty in the industry, right? And once a day, if it pops up, they get a dev to look at it. And if not, they let it rock. So even because normally we find these problems in the dev chain. So that's
a good thing. Yeah, that's a good thing. Yeah, because if you find it in the dev side, you're now at least able to limit its actual risk and impact to any organization, right? You're finding it in that development and testing side of this. But when you actually talk about it from that perspective, it is those healthy companies that benefit from the efficiency of these type of coding practices too, right? As you start thinking about it, when you set up a CI/CD pipeline, for another buzzword to throw in there, or continuous integration, continuous development, if I got that right.
Continuous integration, continuous deployment. It's my ability to like.
I lost the point. Damn it.
No. There's no points here.
There's always points here.
You already gave me ZTC.
A couple free points. Yeah.
TCA. You're way ahead in points.
Okay. We're cool. We're getting at least even. We're in good shape there. So, but the point is, if you're already doing healthy things that automate that give static checks and dynamic checks as they go live, that does all this, then for me as an MSP, you know what I can do? I can feel really comfortable with you being in the seat of your due care as a company, actually caring about me in ways that maybe I'm not mature enough to understand. And I put this out there, Jim, as a self point. I've not been a developer. I've not been that person that's done it. I've had to learn about this through the lens of people getting destroyed by poor software. I've had to learn about this through the lens of seeing people cut corners in early stages of development that never get uncut. Right? If you look back at the Thycotic server when it comes to Uber, that's a byproduct of making choices, maybe not code, but of making choices in the way you used your code and integrated and never came back and swept it up from early days, right? The way they had integrated that and left it there with that API key being a little bit summative. But the point being, if companies are doing this, it should be a good reason to buy from them, right? If they are doing this in a high level and can pass that, Jim Manico sniff test, if you will, of that software development, you would think you'd have higher consumer confidence, and that's what's starting to play out. And I think you kind of got started down this, and I cut you off. So let's get back to some of the other things you're looking at there, or whatever you want to talk about. I don't care. So
well, I know being a managed service provider is really important to your world, Matt. And like,
it is.
But look at how difficult this is. I'm a managed service provider, and I want to like resell software or host software, or do a bunch of different things with other people's software, and I want to make profit. But what does it really cost me to understand the security I'm getting into? Like, I can ask them for assurance evidence. They may give me some scanning reports. But that's a point in time.
To your point earlier, that's a point in time, not a moving picture, right? In your statement. So,
but what does it take 100%. To really analyze if someone's doing software security well? And my answer is that's expensive. And like, how much would a MSP, managed service provider, want to spend to get assurance that the software package they're about to like depend their customer security on is reasonable from a security point of view, and continues to be reasonable throughout time? And I don't know with whatever expertise I have, whatever, right? I don't have a good answer to that right now, because Matt, I want a pen test. I want one pen test on this like million line about how much should I spend on a pen test, honestly? Well,
depends on how many vulnerabilities you have and what you haven't done, but 15, 20 grand probably for an entry level, pretty decent little pen test. Yeah.
15 is a hard thing. I prefer 20. It just sounds smoother.
It does. It's much better. Let's say 20. We'll redefine the market. We're already making up other acronyms. Let's just redefine the whole market, man. I'm in. So it's all right. No, but you're right. Yeah, 100%. And I think adding to that, though, one of the things that I wanted to kind of draw out is, if you wanted to answer that question, what's good enough? And I think, to your point, that would be that final perfect vision for an MSP. But in my mind, there's this little project I found. You may not have ever heard of this. It's really cool. It's called the ASVS. It's the Application Security Verification Standard. Have you ever heard of that? It's a really good one.
ASVS is the OWASP ASVS. That's the Open Web Application Security Project Application Security Verification Standard. This standard in secure coding is led by Daniel Cuthbert, Josh Grossman, Elar Lang, and myself, Jim Manico.
I thought your name was on there. Yeah. And what that attempts to do is answering that question. What is the ASVS supposed to do? What does it help, at least from the lens of an MSP asking this of their vendors?
Well, it's a list of requirements in developer language to address what it takes to write secure software. It's broken down into a series of different domains like data validation and cryptography and similar. And for each of those sections, or authentication, access control, and more, for each of those sections, there's a list of requirements: parameterize database queries, validate data in this way, and so on. And so it's a detailed list of what engineers need to do in a piece of web or API software to author it in a secure fashion. Now, I like ASVS. That's a view of basically the application itself security posture. Now, what we're missing from that is like process, right? So I want to zoom out for a second. Here's another project I want to point out. It's called the MVSP, the Minimal Viable Secure Project. I would love an ASVS assessment to look at the details of an individual piece of software. But for a managed service provider, if they want a broad picture, the MVSP, the Minimal Viable Secure Product, is going to hit 25 requirements only. ASVS is more like 300. This is 25 requirements, and it asks great questions. What's your time to fix vulnerabilities? You want to talk smack? Hey, give me a report. That's great. But what is your actual time to fix when it comes to vulnerability? Produce and deploy patches to address application vulnerabilities that material impact security within 90 days of discovery is what the Minimal Viable Secure Product Standard is asking for. That's really reasonable. And what a great question, because now I'm not asking for a list of vulnerabilities. I'm saying, no, what's your time to fix? Oh, now I get
We're getting to the core of the problem in that situation, right? We're getting down to the meat of it of, do you quickly patch these things, right? So continue.
the minimal viable secure product is mainly written by like Salesforce, Google, Okta, Slack, Vanta, C2Sec, other big companies like that helped make this happen. And so Google also is a fan of ASVS and MASVS, the Application Security Verification Standard and the Mobile Application Security Verification Standard. They use that in their work to some degree at Google as well. But this checklist, I love it for the broad spectrum that a managed service provider needs to get good assurance before they bet the farm on that piece of software. And ASVS would be another layer of depth. If this software, if you're really talking about like tens of millions of dollars at play per year type of MSP, then maybe you want to both do the minimal viable secure product checklist through some kind of review service and look at ASVS for an individual piece of software and dig really deep into that one piece of software. I can see doing both when there's a lot of money on the table. So if you're trying to get out cheaply, cost effectively, I like minimal viable secure product. It's genius, in my opinion.
Here's what's cool. You've just read my notebook. I'd like for you to please stay out of my notebook room. We keep having guests get it. I think Claire and Danielle may be part of that overall conspiracy. But, you know, Pax8, one of the things we see ourselves in, and this is, you know, you're on, you know, show for me with Pax8, but we actually are taking it on myself, as well as a lot of our product team, to ask our vendors to answer all of ASVS level 1. And this also minimum secure viable product, security product. And the reason for that is I'm trying to go in question-based order to try to do one thing, Jim. And this is kind of what you started off with this theme today. This is my theme as well. What can I tell about the health of this as a cyclical nature? And you've pointed it out perfectly, right? Most security things look at this point in time to determine health. But it's really more about the actions. It's not about what vulnerabilities exist. It's how quickly you get rid of them. It's not about what dependencies you have. It's about how quickly you can determine if they have problems. And when you start getting into that, that's health. I know, buddy. We've known it for years.
Now you're
We're
talking.
just separated at birth. Yeah. And it's all about this. Go ahead.
No, it's a hard thing to get unless that vendor is actually like saving that kind of scanning data. What if they're not doing a lot of scanning? I have no idea how long. They have no idea like how long it takes for them, even them, to fix their vulnerabilities and push it live. It's a hard thing to ask, but I think it's the right thing to ask. In a matter of a couple questions about how long it takes you to fix, address, or find something, you're going to get a really good idea on the health, like you're saying. And I'm a big fan of that.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's what you're looking for, right? Like, you're not looking for, can Matt throw a great right punch? It's, can his fat butt be chased around a ring for 12 rounds and still throw a great right punch? And I think part of this is we haven't thought about this in this, the live nature of security and software and development and all these things coming together, all also being really babies. Like, developing software has only been around for half of a century, right? Like, joking aside. And so maybe a little more, but you know, you're getting to this point where this is what we're starting to look for is, can that person be healthy, right? If you look at a doctor, it's about the overall decision capacitance of that doctor and the practice and how they get you in, how quickly they treat you, and how well they do their post-surgical visits, and how well they, and all those things. And so you wouldn't assess the doctor necessarily based on their creds. You would assess the doctor based on the outcome of their patients. And I think that's what we're starting to see. And I'd love to poke this by you too. One of the things that I think is changing this, and you and I have talked about what needs to change, which is this deeply embedding these things into day-to-day processes and automating as much as possible, all those things. But what's driving this? And I've had this theory I've kicked around for years, Jim, and it's called the middle theory. And it really just says that in capitalism, any product is only going to be as good as the maturity of the consuming entity, never much above and never much below. And the reason for that is it's capitalism. I want to make my profit. If they like this and they're buying it, there is no reason for me to make it better. In that regard, when you look at the code of companies and how they've written application, I think those economic forces are changing because we are maturing. I'm just an old idiot from North Florida that's just starting to understand, oh my God, this software that's being made could kill me. It could cause problems. It could cause economic challenges. It could destroy businesses. And you're starting to see the maturity of the me's be able to ask questions through the things that you've worked on, through the things that exist in this world, of our vendors to say, hey, this isn't okay. And we can vote with our dollars. And so I think it's a magical thing. And I just am curious on your thoughts on some of this change being driven in the industry from kind of that maturation cycle.
When I hear you ask that question, it makes me think that I get some of the most unlikely software teams asking for secure code training. I don't want to out him
Okay.
too much, but like a yoga app, someone's running a mobile yoga app and they're making good money. They're making millions of dollars on this app. And they're like, and they have like a team of developers and they're like, they're making money. So they're bringing in more developers and making it even more sharp. Right. And they brought me in to do secure code training. I never would have thought that would have ever happened. And I'm seeing a lot more of that where if like a company that's just started writing software as a startup, they're rarely doing security in my experience. But if they're using newer architectures, they'll have at least they'll have a better fighting chance if they're at least using modern cloud type services to some degree.
Yes.
Right? And
we'll put a pin in that and drill into that in just a second. Keep going. I'm gonna come back to that.
Then they start making money and they're handling personal data. And so right away, most organizations who are pushing mobile software, they're already running up against, you can't check code in to the iStore unless you go through some kind of security scanning, a little bit at least. If it's just a sloppy mess, it's going to be rejected to these stores.
Right.
So you're getting indoctrinated in that way. And then the field of privacy regulation in Europe, you got the general data
GDPR,
privacy regulation, and that really has driven secure development across Europe. When GDPR first came out, I had like almost more business in Europe than the US for a blip in time from that spike. And now we got the California privacy GDPR, the general data
New York
privacy
Shield
regulation.
Yep,
I'm
it's
close.
I think it is. Yeah, we'll double check, but I believe
California CCPA, I believe, is the California law.
The New York Shield Act. You've got NYDFS, Department of Financial Services stuff. Like you've got tons of these privacy-based core legislation. In fact, I think there's 24 in state legislature right now that are going through that same process, different states. So yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. Privacy is a huge piece of this.
Exactly, and you can't really have privacy in a piece of software without security. Now, privacy and security are different things, but privacy requires security. Absolutely, it does. And so I think, and PCI DSS, that's the payment card industry data security standard.
Yeah, DSS, that's right. Yeah.
This is like a private cabal of credit card companies who say, you follow our private regulation or we're going to charge you more. It's so bizarre. But
says the guy in the very cabal-esque hat, right? So like, if I'm honest about this whole cabal situation, so I love
part of it. No, I'm part of it. I get a lot of business doing PCI DSS training developers. So I thank you, PCI 100%. DSS.
But I want to drill into something you said, and this is actually my experience across the board. So I joke about zero trust, Jim, but I'm actually on the CSA zero trust architecture. I'm writing the exam and training, and also some of the test questions. But the reason I bring up that from that perspective is it is easier to implement from greenfield today than it would be to convert from brownfield before of traditional coding methodologies, right? I think to your point, if I start in the cloud and I'm using Terraform and I'm using things that allow me to modern practices and ephemeral machines and all the fun stuff that I could code towards in the way that I'm doing my operations and my infrastructure, there are inherent capabilities built into these cloud things that add some capacitance as easy as a click, right? And I think that's kind of, maybe that's towards your point of saying if I am starting with these modern tools, then it's usually a little bit better. Is that kind of what you're trying to say there? That's what I wanted to drill in on.
So I have one customer that's a Perl shop, and they really started writing their app well over 20 years ago. And they're making
I thought Perl's like on a necklace. I'm so sorry, but I'm with you now. It's Perl scripting language.
Is Perl even an acronym?
I don't know what Perl stands for. Dang it.
Perl is a programming language, right? Perl is a programming language from like the 90s to build websites.
Is this the one that doesn't stand for anything? I think Perl stands for Perl, right? This is the one that there is no acronym. It's actually just Perl.
What does Perl stand for?
I don't think it does.
Here with the search engine. Perl is a PE. No, I don't think.
I think Dom actually knows this one, but I believe Perl is practical extraction and report language.
It's an acronym.
Practical extraction and
reporting language. The practical extraction and reporting language was first written in 1987 by Larry freaking Wall. What's up, Larry Wall?
So I've actually been in meetings with Larry Wall before. Yeah. Anyways, I didn't know who he was at the time, but.
When you're trying to fix older apps like that are written in older styles, the kind of deep work you have to do to fix it is mammothly time consuming. where
Yep.
if I was able to pick a modern language and a modern cloud environment and a modern, like use GitHub and use GitHub security
Yep.
tooling and similar with click and not too much effort, I can get some really impressive both architecture choices for my software and
Yep.
security scanning infrastructure. I can go download Defect Dojo. These are all open source or free projects. Defect Dojo, OWASP Zap, SemGrep,
Yep.
and the OWASP dependency check tool. And I have a full like DevOps scanning infrastructure all from open source. It's not, and it's there for us today, where when that Perl app was first written or that any app was written 20 years ago, none of that was in place. Security was barely even on the minds of people. And these attacks that we look at today were just being discovered for the first time when some of these apps are being written. So yeah, modern infrastructure, modern scanning, modern DevOps, modern languages, all make a huge difference in managing security.
Yeah, 100%. How do you, let me ask you this, when you are talking about this surface area and how much it changes, right? You've got Go now, you've got all kinds of languages that keep popping up. How do you stay yourself educated? Yeah, it's one of the challenges I find from switching to be an educator from a practitioner directly for the most part. How do you stay educated on those deltas and what is possible and what you should be teaching towards? Just a maybe side question.
Just being in class with a lot of the developers I teach are super smart, like architects and people have been doing development for years. And they sometimes ask me questions I can't answer. Well, I put it on
research
the graveyard and I go research it. And so a lot of my students drive me to research and keep up to date. And just being in the classroom, getting like every word I'm saying being checked by very intelligent engineers of big companies. They put me to the test early in my career, and I was embarrassed at some of the mistakes I made. And like 10 years as an educator later, I'm making a lot less mistakes. And when I do make a mistake or someone corrects me, I celebrate their wisdom in class and have fun with it. Like I said something about digital signature that was off base last year. So I called this guy Paul. I'm like, everyone had to refer to him as King Paul before they can ask me a question. So like hey, ask King Paul.
At least you're not petty.
And Paul would be, I go, Joe, you may ask Jim a question. Paul was into it, being king of my class. And suddenly me making a mistake in class turned into a fun thing with the person who corrected me was celebrated. And I never made that mistake again. Never made that mistake.
I gotta be honest with you, Jim. I find a corollary for myself here. I absolutely was thinking I couldn't sustain this because that's how I learn right now is I play and I do stuff myself. But really it's when somebody that I work with, an MSP partner, another engineer goes, Matt, what about this? And I go, oh no, I don't know. Great. Let's go find out. Right. And I think it's very validating for me to hear that's how you handle it as well. That's really cool. So thank you.
And also I Google stuff. It's like, I was at a party and some guy had a few drinks. Was telling me, there's no such thing as a word for happiness in German. He's like, I'm like, maybe you want to Google that before you start talking smack like that at a party. It's actually not just two words, actually. So
Did you also explain to him Schadenfreude explains what you just got to feel right then as he said that? Did you take it full circle? Because that would be beautiful.
No, I'm a student. I'm curious, and I Google stuff and ask questions. Listen to shows like yours, and continue to be curious. And in order to be an educator, I have to do that. And I'll keep doing it until I retire. Then I'm all
and I think that's actually the best call out I've made on this show yet is be curious. I think that is one of the themes and traits that I've met of most people that enthrall me, that bring me in and make me go, man, this person's amazing. It's because they're always curious. They're one of the best compliments I've ever received was from a Belgian guy by the name of Benno van Weyenberg. And he said to me, Matt, you hold extremely loosely to passionate beliefs. And it's meant to say, listen, I'm willing to learn and continue changing my opinions and not hold hard to opinions that are proven wrong. Right in that conversation. And so I love that's how you go forward. So one of the things is you do a lot of education, you do a lot of one-to-one, but you also have a pretty cool platform for people taking this, right? I've gotten the benefit of seeing kind of some of what you do. Can you speak a little bit about that coding lab type stuff that you do at all? And make sure I'm not conflating you with someone else. I believe that was your platform.
So honestly, my main focus is doing live classroom instruction. I'm a
Sure.
4th generation educator, and I believe in having a good instructor rather than having a good platform. That's not a popular opinion. And so I hire like PhDs with personalities and really like high-end educators. And so we're people-based. My platform are PowerPoint files and different lab platforms I use that I've purchased or lease, or open source projects and different labs, different languages. But I'm not a platform. We're professional instructors. And I'll tell you what's different is I used to do like these big 8-hour classes. Now I have customers who book like 10 2-hour classes and teach it in small segments. But otherwise, my company is about live instruction, people who are both industry leaders of the topics that we're teaching and are good presenters and are entertaining, honestly, and can keep your attention so you're not falling asleep. So there's a lot of platforms out there in the world of education, and I do believe in them, but I've never seen a platform that's a replacement for the interaction you can have with a live instructor. So I recommend especially to big companies, they do both. They have some live instruction, and they use some of the various education platforms out there. Like I push out.
I'm glad I got to pull your chain on this one. That was a little bit intentional, because that's exactly it. At Pax8, we have Academy where we do live instructor training stuff. One of my biggest ones that I love is I'm teaching on CIS. And focusing with MSPs on using CIS as a core tenet of how they go to market with their security strategy for them, and using those top 18 controls as a barometer for their world, right? They're usually not code producing. They're usually being that service arm. And so that's one of the things. But the live instruction, you just get to connect with people. There's a chemical aspect. There's an emotional aspect. There's learning that can't be had in the kinesthetic manipulation of something or watching of videos. I genuinely believe that. So I was being a little self aggrandizing there in my own right of asking that question. So, anyways, Jim, we're right at the end of it, and I'm pretty much wrapped up. But on that common theme of speaking to those MSPs, should they be, and what should they be doing to ask their vendor, if they don't have a Pax8, if they don't have somebody like me that's starting to ask these questions of the vendors and bring it down to their capability of consumption, how should an MSP look at overall a software security posture, if you will, with their vendors? What should they be asking?
Again, the main thing that I would ask today is I would go take a look at the 25 basic requirements in the minimal viable secure product. It's a list of 25 controls that are pretty straightforward. This is like a baseline criteria for secure products. It specifies checks applicable to even a small company. This is updated on a yearly basis, and it's not meant to be ultra comprehensive. It's meant to be broad spectrum for someone like a managed service provider. And take a look at it. And if that list of questions is too hard for your vendor, well, I think that there's your answer, right? So
yeah,
great
call out, Jim. Yeah, that's a great call out. We'll wrap this up. Pax8 likes to do a fun thing where we ask people to say something strange about themselves, right? So tell me a weird fact, Jim, about yourself, and we'll close it out with a weird fact. And it can't be a fedora. I already got that one. It's quite apparent. We're there.
I do an extreme amount of Ashtanga yoga and like do things like handstands and cartwheels. And at the age of 50, I'm going to hot Pilates, which is like 130-degree rooms doing nuts. Burpees for an hour and stuff like that. And so that's probably one of the more exciting parts of my life right now, doing that. There you go.
Well, brother, you're always fighting the good fight, and I really appreciate all you do. And thanks for coming on the show. I hope people found value in that. MSPs, if you guys are watching this and watch it on the post recording, if you ever have your vendors ask, well, how can I learn? How can I do this? Point them over to Jim's way. He's an OG from the OGist stance. So thank y'all. We're going to go ahead and wrap this up. I'm not as smart as Dom, so I'm going to do my best to close out this show. That has typically been a Dom function. But I'm going to give it a go. So if you guys don't mind, please smash the subscribe, click the bell so you know that we're live, and bring it up. Help us get this channel continue to grow, right? And join us next week. We're going to be talking to Sam Alva. He's actually the Region 7 Cybersecurity Advisor to CISA for Department of Homeland Security. And he's going to talk to us about operational technology and how your toaster might kill you. So join us next week. We look forward to it. And thank y'all for being here. We'll see you next time. Thanks, Jim.